folks. This is Cassie on the Sunday Brunch show, and
Elaine, woo!
Freddie, yay!
And we've also got Trishka with us, Trishka Saffery. Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome, Trishka.
In-house poet.
How wonderful.
Do you think we should start with a poem? I'd love to.
Yeah. We've just been having a chat, haven't we, Trishka? And yes, Trishka's got her wonderful book here, and we'd love to start.
What's the book called?
Oh yeah,
the book is called Minding the Gap.
Brilliant. So, which poem are you going to start with, Trishka?
I'm going to start with Bottle of Wine.
Brilliant.
Which I hope will sort of relate to some of the slightly older ladies who perhaps on their own. So here I go. Listen, God, here I am at 48, and it seems like my kids can't wait to leave home and move in with friends or live in sin with the most peculiar young men. And I want to know, Lord, when the last of them has left the nest, what am I meant to do with the rest of my life? I was a good wife to Ron, and you know he was a sod, what with the fear and the pain, God, towards the end. So I've lost my best friend, God. And now the kids are going too. And what am I supposed to do? Listen, Lord, I've got a prayer. Or perhaps it's a dream where, in time for Christmas, you send me this fella. He's 50-ish and 6'3", a widower, handsome and romantic. And of course, Lord, he is frantically in love with me and brings gifts of chocolates and other things. A rose, a poem, a bottle of wine. No, I can't cope with all that crap. Listen, Lord, how about if we scrap the fella? Just a bottle of wine would be fine.
Yes.
I love it. Woo!
That's so brilliant.
We were reading it before you got here, but we were in nowhere near as well.
Beautifully articulated and well read. Yes, your lovely voice. Thank you, Trishka.
Thank you. And I think probably people can relate to the bottle of wine quite well. So you wrote that one at 48. Presumably.
Oh, no, I can't. I just wrote it as a thing about women in that sort of age group. I can't remember when I wrote it. Probably about 5 or 10 years ago.
Was there inspiration for the 6'3" guy?
No, definitely not. It was just really to I think there are a lot of women at that stage of their life, or maybe at that stage of my life I was seeing a lot of women like that. I don't know. But it's that sort of what I do now, you know, my marriage or my divorce or whatever is finished, and, you know, or I've lost my husband and the kids are going off. What next? And I suppose that's really what I was trying to encapsulate.
Could write poetry.
So, Trishka, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah,
so when you wake up in the morning, do you have like a routine as a writer? Do you have certain sort of places that you like to write in?
No, I mostly lie in bed and about 3 lines come into my head, and I'm obliged to get up and go and scrabble them down and put a few other little bits and pieces down, and I either will or won't at some point the next day start pulling it all together and turning it into a poem.
Oh, that's really lovely to hear. Because sometimes you hear people go, oh, no, every day I'm up and I'm out with the lock, I'm walking, and then I spend 3 hours, you know, and it's just, you just sort of think, how am I going to ever do this if I wanted to write something? So that feels really good.
But when did you start writing poems?
Well, I can remember at probably 12 or 13, we were required to do a ballad in English class, and I ended up doing 15 ballads for the other people in my class who didn't know how to do this. I suppose you could say I started about then. All different ballads, obviously.
That's a lot of work.
No, it was fun because my brother and I used to talk to each other in rhyming couplets when we were kids. You know, no, it's very simple. You just use probably about 12 different rhymes that are all very similar, and you just swing your words around them. You know, it's not hard.
So you always knew you were a writer, did you? Or what age did you think you kind of thought, yes, this is what I want to do?
I don't really know, because I've done it on and off. I don't have half the stuff that I wrote, because we obviously emigrated and you don't take that sort of stuff with you. And then I was married to a singer-songwriter, and it sort of felt like raining on his parade to be writing while he was writing.
Like a Yoko Ono thing.
Yeah. and so it really only bubbled up in the last 15 years or so. And then only occasional. And it was really my son said, you must get them into a book. So there we go.
Yeah. Follow your dreams, guys.
Yeah. What a great story, yeah.
There's some great poems in there, and they're spanning a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I guess you said some of them you didn't include because you didn't bring them with you, but did you selectively take some out for various reasons, or?
No, I didn't, because it's actually a very honest collection. It's what they are, and some of them are better than others. But basically, poetry is one of those things where you tell the truth, or you're not writing very good poetry. Mm-hmm. And so there wasn't anything that I was particularly holding back.
I think that's completely true. If you're disingenuous in your poems, then you can tell.
Yes.
And that's something really nice that comes across about your poems, is sort of the heartfeltness about it. And I get a sense of sadness in the ones that I've read.
Yes.
But even among the really funny ones, because that Speaking to Ants one you mentioned was very funny. But
maybe we could hear it.
Yes. I know we've not given you sorry.
Oh, so
we'll give you time to find it in the book.
She desperately searches.
Oh, Christ. Maybe we could trail it for the next link.
Yes. So if we play a couple of songs and then we come back with Speaking to Ants, that would be great. Saffery. We've got Trishka Saffery with us, who's reading us some poems from her new book, which is Minding the Gap.
Where can one buy that?
Where can one purchase this book?
Through Amazon or any online bookseller.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good online books.
And you can get it on Kindle as well, which is probably obvious if you're familiar with Amazon, but I'm a bit of a technophobe, but
Kindle fan.
Let's over-explain. That's better that way.
Yeah, but yeah, in electronic devices and in physical form. Trishka's got another poem for us, one you were telling us about. It's quite amusing. Would you like to introduce?
Yes, this is one about my mother who used to speak to ants, and it's called Speaking to Ants, not strangely. My mother spoke to ants. Small black kitchen ants and larger wine-coloured battalions as they boldly marched across the wooden kitchen table in search of breadcrumbs, sugar, sometimes homemade jam. Like a kindly enemy general, she would explain to them that this was all that they could have. In the morning they must be gone. Her voice would be soft but clear, determined. By morning they would be gone. But she never addressed the termites, yellow, orange. They spread like pus across the floorboards. Poison or boiling water would dispatch them. And in those moments she seemed to me a child, strangely ruthless and angry, frighteningly unlike her kindly self. In later years she spoke to cats, but they remained somehow aloof, regarding her as a mad old woman who spoke to ants.
Cats.
Oh, they're cats.
That's so judgmental, aren't they?
They just do they just do what they want. Cats. They do their own thing.
It's so nice because it's like it's little moments that you wouldn't think to put in a poem if you're not a poet yourself. But yeah, it's a nice little insight into your mother's life. It's strange how she sort of has an affinity for ants and not for termites. Doesn't like them.
And the line spreads like pus. Wow, that's
graphic.
That sticks with you, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Very, very descriptive.
Do you have a favourite poet yourself, of people you like?
I think of more. I absolutely love T.S. Eliot. I think Eliot really sort of kick-started me wanting to write poetry. I can remember years ago sort of reciting to my family The Journey of the Magi. It was a cold coming we had of it, just the worst time of the year for a journey. Such a long journey. It's fantastic. I mean, he is unbelievable. But more recently, I discovered the Liverpool poets, who obviously hadn't been part of my education because they probably hadn't even been born by then. But Brian Patton I discovered when I walked into a bookshop, sort of looking for something to do between things that I had to get done. and I pulled out this book and I found Brian Patton's Sometimes It Happens. And I stood like an absolute idiot in the middle of Waterstones crying for two reasons. First of all, it's an amazing poem. And secondly, because I'd found somebody who wrote the same way that I did in this sort of accessible form that I thought just wasn't really poetry. But no, this was a published and well-known poet. And I just stood there and howled. I was being very pathetic.
It feels... I think somebody said earlier when you were talking about it, it was like finding a friend, or
yes, completely.
And did that give the inspiration to really think that you could do it yourself?
Yes, that got me properly kick-started in this country. Was reading that, and then I read the other Liverpool poets and thought, yeah, this is a style I didn't know somebody else had as well. But this is how I write, so that was really a release for me.
Honestly, before reading it, I've not read poetry in such a long time, and it is very accessible, your writing, and I thought this is what I would like poems to be to me, is something that you can look at it and see yourself in, almost, like somebody talking to you.
We said that earlier because we were reading before you got here, Trishka, in the studio. Freddie read the one about the communists. There's a lovely poem about the communists, and it's quite personal, and it made my head just sort of went off into my own stories, and it was just it opened up something for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of my favourites, actually, that I've written. It's, again, because it is so personal, I suppose.
And it's over a long period of time that you've written these, and I feel like there's some of them that I haven't got to in age yet. But I feel like that's a future thing that I'm going to understand later. Yeah. It's just great. We'd love to hear some more poems, and we will have some of those. So I wanted to talk about your history in South Africa. There's some more poems about more serious issues in there.
Yes. I was in South Africa and at that age, sort of from teenage onwards, very aware that we were living, from earlier than that, very aware that we were living in a very divided society, that things were very different from people who had black skins. And then there was another subdivision between English-speaking and Afrikaans-speaking people, because there was a much more Calvinistic sort of attitude. And one of the things that was sort of part of the underpinning of apartheid was an expression, trap op sy nek, which means literally stand on his neck. Oh. And absolutely horrifying when I think about it now, absolutely horrifying. But gradually I became very political. My parents got interviewed by the Special Branch, it was all that sort of stuff. It was a strange time to grow up. We had a relative who was under house arrest, which meant she was a solicitor, and she'd been on the case of somebody who'd tried to blow up a bridge, and I think it was related to Peter Hain, in fact, but I might have that wrong. And she as a result was unable to practice. She was unable to leave her house. She was unable to have visitors in, and all the rest of it. So, yeah.
And you mentioned about the title of the book and the gaps.
Yes, one of those gaps is definitely the gap between being a young woman in South Africa, because I was only 27 or so when I left with an 8-month-old baby, and becoming British, as much as I'm ever going to be totally British. But there's also a gap where I became a Christian almost by default, because a long time ago I can remember standing in my son's headmaster's office and thumping his desk and saying, I will not have my child taught this stuff, and I'm going to take him out and put him in classes to learn French, which will be some use to him. So I came a long journey, 2 journeys.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to know the meaning behind the titles, and we'd love to have another poem after a couple more songs, and we'll get some adverts on too. We've got Trishka in with us, poet, and
she knows it.
Reader of poems. We were just talking before the break about your first gap in your history in South Africa, and we've got a poem to read for us, which is a bit of a sadder poem. So,
right, this one's called Roger. Roger was brown, burnished and bright. He laughed and lived with all his might. He was our hero, our little Adam, the human link between Sophie and Madam. Sophie would iron and scrub and sweep, while Madam would chase and tickle and tease, until at last he'd fall asleep, sprawled in my pregnant lap, at ease. My son was born. Roger turned 2. We did what the law required us to do. He was sent to the homeland, somewhere or other, to be cared for by an old aunt of his mother. Each month, from her wages, money was sent. Reports filtered back it was not being spent on Roger. Protests, letters, and then the train journey. Sophie disquieted back again. We have word that Roger is starving, ill, and the white doctor insisting the bill be paid in advance. I send a letter. I'll meet all costs. Just get him better. But ignorance, greed, white laws have won. Oh, madam, she whispers, we've lost our son. So we wept together, so sad and wild. And where her poor dark head was pressed, sweet milk for my own well-nourished child ran like blood across my chest.
That's really nice.
That's really sad.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a lovely poem, and it's there's such a variety in the book.
Was that inspired by a true story?
Oh, that was absolutely literally true.
Really?
Yes.
That must be so painful.
Yeah.
To witness that, to be,
yes.
But your writing, it's beautiful.
That was, one of the things that made us determined we were going to leave South Africa.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because we just couldn't do anything to help the situation. And it was so personal and so close. Yeah.
So you became almost a political opponent. You mentioned that they bugged your car. So you got your own back in a very small way.
Well, they didn't actually bug our car as our car. It was a car that somebody who was under house arrest, an aunt of my husband's, had given us the car, but she knew it was bugged. And so we used to be amused to take our crying baby out in it and think of them all sitting there desperately trying to hear what we were saying and just hearing, wow!
You're going to be going to a poetry festival, you mentioned,
yes,
to read poems. Where is that going on?
Now, this is part of the Fringe Festival that's on for 2022. It's been cancelled the last couple of years. And the Maidstone Poetry Showcase is taking place on Thursday the 28th of April at 7:30 in the evening, and it's at the Stile and Winch in Union Street in Maidstone.
Ah, yes, I do know of that.
That's good to know. And also, I just thought I'd mention that if there are any poets out there that want to get in touch, maybe, because Trishka was asking, just really finding, local poets, people to come together. If you're interested, get in touch, give us a text.
Definitely. We were asking whether there was a good poetry scene around Maidstone, and you said you were looking.
Yes.
Sorry. I can't see you. So if there is anybody that knows of anything that's going on, we'd be happy to pass it on.
Yes, I'd love to know about anything and get to speak to a few more poets who like to do performance poetry specifically.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. It's something I haven't seen around, and I would like to see more of, actually.
Yeah, I think you could do it as sort of open mic, almost with something like singer-songwriters, because the two things would support one another and could, be interspersed almost to make an evening. So
come on, pubs.
Come on, pubs.
Absolutely.
What are you doing out there?
Get some more people in, and you could hopefully find more people that you like. I've forgotten the word. Emanate? Connect with? Connect.
Yes.
Like with your Liverpool poem. Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm sure there's lots of poets out there, but it is just that putting it out there, isn't it?
It
and
is.
I think you're absolutely right. It would be lovely to get some gatherings in Maidstone. You know, there must be other poets really wanting to share their work on open mic nights.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And maybe there's some of you out there who want to try your hand at poetry, but haven't had the inspiration yet. Well, hopefully. Trishka here, and her new book, Minding the Gap.
Yes, and you can get it on Amazon. If you type in, we've got it on our social media post, Trishka's name. If you search it on Google, it's the first thing that comes up. Thank you so much for coming in to talk to us and for reading poems for us. It's been really lovely.
I've so enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.